Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Illinois Stories. I'm Mark McDonald in Jacksonville at Illinois College. Back in 1880, there were no high schools in Illinois. And the officers here at Illinois College thought, well, wouldn't it be great to have a preparatory school? So a Dr. Whipple gave $10,000 to build Whipple Hall. But in the ensuing years, Whipple Hall became deteriorated and almost fell down. Well, another benefactor paid to have it restored, and now it houses a terrific museum, a Hall of Fame, and a library. You got to see this. Congressman Paul Findley, now at the age of 93, and after having spent 22 years in Congress, we sit in your reconstituted congressional office. Everything in this Whipple Hall room is like it was in your congressional office in Washington, D.C. Pretty close. How does it feel to sit here again? Does it bring back a lot of old memories?
It's always a thrill to be close to the Lincoln sofa, which has been my property for some years and was in my office on Capitol Hill for the last 10 years I was in office. But the surroundings in this room are so identical to what I experienced at home and then before that on Capitol Hill, that it's a great privilege always to be here again.
I'll bet it is. Congressman, go ahead.
Let me tell you how all this happened.
Okay. Okay.
About 12 years ago, I invited all of the fourth grade students in Washington School to come visit me at my home office. Mm-hmm. And the room was much like this. And they sat on the floor and we had fun. One of them asked me if I ever met Abraham Lincoln. Another asked my wife how old she was. Then another one said, when you die, what happens to all this stuff?
That got you thinking, didn't it?
That got me thinking, because there are so many things here that I think would interest a new generation and many generations about service in Congress, how Congress once was a much more cooperative institution than it is today, and how we're going to get back on the right track. So it's a memorable day, and to have you here to look around, I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you. This is an interesting slice of history. I want to start with the Lincoln couch, okay? And if you don't mind, I'm going to get up and move around a little bit. You just stay where you are.
Okay.
This is the couch we're talking about, and you got possession of this in 1978, and you know that this was in Lincoln's law office, do you not?
Absolutely. I have on the wall provenance that proves without any doubt that that's genuine. The Pennsylvania Historical Society had it. They were short on money. They credited me with some sales they made, and they offered this couch to me for $6,000, which I thought was a terrific buy, and it was. And they gave me 3 years to pay.
Well, on a congressman's salary, that took 3 years to pay, didn't it? You probably had, when this was in your Washington office, I would assume you had a lot of visitors that came by, not to see you, but to see your couch.
That's right. That's right. It's a far bigger attraction than I ever was.
And behind you, this is your desk, and this is the way it sat in your office in Washington.
Yes.
And I
family
like
pictures.
Family pictures behind. There's your dear wife in the middle. Your son Craig. He's still active around the Springfield area. And your daughter, I'm not familiar with her. Diane, okay. And some family pictures there. And on your desk, some very close mementos for you from some of your friends. You were very good friends with some of the Arab people.
Well, it was Khalif Habtour, who had been a friend for 25 years, whose money made this possible. Without his cooperation and the cooperation of the college administration, this never could have occurred.
You know, we're going to hear more about him because we're going to tour this building, and he was responsible for rehabbing and restoring this building,
right,
wasn't he?
building.
Okay, I'm going to walk over this way, and I want you to do a little dialogue with me as I go, okay? A lot of people are going to recognize you from your trail rides. That's how you campaigned, wasn't it?
I'm best remembered for the trail ride, although there was one exception. There was a woman who called the former president of Illinois College one day. She said, the thing I remember most about Congressman Findley was the quality of the nail files he passed out at campaign time. Now, I've got a sample of the nail file in a case here.
You're no cheapskate, are you? When it comes, you're no cheapskate. When it comes to mementos, you give the good ones, right? Okay. And I want to show a photograph, too, of this, because these trail rides, Bob Church, your assistant here, your curator here, told me that this was the largest collection of horses in a trail ride ever assembled.
And it happened every September. It was not a campaign gimmick. I want you to understand that. It just happened that Findley signs were the only ones allowed.
Gotcha, gotcha. Now, right below that, there's a very interesting headline here. I think it's the Washington Post. And what we see, it says JFK's last known doodle and what it means. And you're involved in that.
It's the last cabinet meeting before his death. And Bobby had that same thing above his desk before he was killed, his brother Bobby.
Yeah.
But there had been an issue in my district over the price of wheat and why communists were getting a better bargain from our government than farmers here were.
Mm-hmm.
So I made a big pile of correspondence on that, took it to the White House one day, and Kennedy was not there. I didn't expect to see him, but I left him with him, and obviously he heard about it.
Mm-hmm.
So that became a central topic that day while he doodled. So he wrote my name and wheat, and then when he determined that it really wasn't all that important, he crossed them both out.
So you didn't make the cabinet meeting that day, right? Didn't have time for Paul. Now, you got out two special things, and these are on Exhibit 2 for people who view your museum. One is the master plan for the federalizing the Lincoln Home site, and the other is, we'll get to that in a little bit, but this was your legislation, and you're very proud of the fact that the Lincoln Home is now part of the National Park System, aren't you?
They have done a marvelous job.
They really have.
And that is the legislative history illustrated from the very beginning to the very end.
Boy, I'll tell you, that was a piece of work, wasn't it? That was not an easy thing to accomplish.
I'm sure the thing I did that will be best remembered forever. I started out with two goals. One was peace, the other was justice. And that was my focus of my legislative endeavors all the way through the 22 years and the years that followed. Excuse me. The names in the record, I put all names of the U.S. personnel killed in Vietnam up to that date. Excuse me, I had to cough.
That's okay. You take your time, and while you get a glass of water, we can take a look at the congressional record that you're talking about here. This is House 2168, and this was your entry one day on the House floor, I assume. And what you did in this day in 1969 was made sure that all of the dead from the Vietnam War were entered into the congressional record.
By name and hometown, it took 48 pages in small type.
Remarkable.
It had a profound effect on the Congress and on the entire country. It was used in peace marches quite often. I came to the view that the war was hopeless, it would never succeed, it would never do anything worthwhile, and needed to be shut down totally. And this was the first step I took.
And people remembered that, didn't they,
Oh, yes.
Congressman? And not only that, but you've got a hard copy here in the Congressional Record to prove it. Now, before we look at the rest of Whipple Hall, which we're going to do, I wanted to look at some of your favorite items are over here. And when I said you were a friend of Arab people, you were very involved in the Middle East situation from the time you took office to the time you left office, and you still are. But you have a lot of appreciation here from your Arab friends, mostly from Yemen, I guess, up in this area.
Well, there's a miniature rug that has the word for God in Arabic. Over to the right is an oil painting. Beyond the hubbly-bubbly is an oil painting at the top.
Right over there and to the right is the oil paint. Yep.
And that's a gift of one of the officers of the South Yemen government.
It's beautiful.
It was all wrapped up in newspaper. They didn't have holiday wrap in South Yemen, so they just wrapped newspaper printer on it as a gift when I left with my constituent. It was had a storybook ending, but it had a sad ending for the two most prominent people that I dealt with during that trip. One was President Salim Ali. He's the one that released my constituent. Let me take him home. He gave me a dagger in the green covered display over there. Is a jambia, it's called in Arabic. Below is the lobster shell, the gift, a rather odd gift, but his prized possession from his office wall.
Is that right?
Of the foreign minister. His name was, excuse me. His name slips me.
Okay. Those names are hard.
Isn't that strange?
Yeah, those Arab names are hard.
Well, both of those men lost their lives 6 years later when a radical group brought about a coup in South Yemen. They were captured, stood up against a wall, and executed. So these are bittersweet memories.
Yeah.
But it was the beginning of better days for Yemen. Shortly after my first experience, they united with the North. They became one Yemen instead of two, and we now have diplomatic relations with it and have good relationship. And I visited Yemen 5 or 6 times, always rejoiced in every moment there.
Mr. Findley,
Wonderful people.
thank you so much for your time and for letting us come in here. And we're going to see the rest of Whipple Hall today, too, from the Hall of Honor back here of other people who went to Illinois College and became congressmen, as well as part of the library. So thank you so much.
Well, the hallway has 20 portraits. Each of them represents a person that served in Congress, but also was a student at Illinois College.
Right.
And I dare say there are very few colleges that had that many people on the Hill over the years.
I'll bet you're right. I'll bet you're right. Thank you, sir.
Pleasure to be with you. And good luck. I love your stories.
Thank you. Jenny Barker Devine, this would be a cool place to teach history.
It absolutely
I mean,
is.
there's a lot to like here, isn't there?
Absolutely. When I showed up here in 2008, I was so excited. Founded in 1829. When you teach history, you can use things from the college to show the students what Illinois College was doing at a given time. So it's very exciting to be here.
We're in Whipple Hall. We were just in Congressman Findley's museum. We're across the hall now in the Leadership Library. Whipple Hall, built in 1830-something, was about ready to fall down, and it got resurrected and restored by no other than the fellow who we've been talking about a lot this hour, Mr. Habtour.
Yeah. Khalifa al-Habtour was born and raised in Dubai and was right there at a really important moment when the United Arab Emirates was created. He was born very poor. In his book, he writes about living in a very dusty home. I think it only had 2 rooms. drinking water from a well that was filled with insects, you know, and now he's one of the richest men in the world. And really, he just worked. You know, he always was open to opportunities, always looking out for opportunities. And as time went on, he really realized that his opportunities were related to the political stability of the United Arab Emirates. And so he has committed himself to speaking out for peace, speaking out for the Middle East. And so that's how he and Paul Findley became friends. They met at a dinner party and
he gave $1.3 million to Illinois College for this restoration
He
work.
did.
Now, there's all around Illinois College. There's all these cool historical stuff, and I'm looking at this I don't know what it is, a little writing table, I guess. And this has some significance, doesn't it?
It does. This was brought to Jacksonville in 1830 with Edward Beecher. He was our first president. He brought it with him from Connecticut, where he was a pastor, and came out here to be our first president. Now, interestingly, on his way, he was caught in a severe blizzard and struggled to get here a little bit. But finally, he made it and settled in. He and his family lived right here on campus, and he was our president until 1844. And
I think this is one of his items as well, isn't it?
This is
something
another
he brought
one
with
of
him?
another one of his items that he brought with him. You know, he is part of the Beecher family. So his sister, of course, is Harriet Beecher Stowe. His father's Lyman Beecher. He was a very well-known abolitionist and outspoken opponent of slavery.
And if we keep moving around, this is interesting because we saw the Lincoln couch in the museum, but oddly, Illinois College also has its own collection. That's Congressman Findley's collection, but its own collection of Lincoln memorabilia. This was in Lincoln's law office?
This was in Lincoln's law office. Interestingly, Lincoln had a lot of connections to Illinois College. He came here and spoke. In 1859, he was initiated into Phi Alpha, one of our literary societies. And when he left to go be president, he gave this chair to his friend David Smith, whose home is still here, used by the women's literary societies. Just off campus a little bit.
That's priceless. That is priceless, and you can see how worn it is. It really got used hard, didn't it?
Well.
And these too.
And these too. These were also in Lincoln's law office, and then later gifted to another friend of his, who then later gave them back to the college. So we're really fortunate to have these artifacts.
Oh, you are. You really are. Also in Whipple Hall, we mentioned this earlier, as you walk into the hall right through the front door, I think it's called the Hall of Honor, or as you say in some of your literature, from the hilltop to the hill.
Yes.
There's a whole Hall of Fame of people who have graduated from here or went to school here at Illinois College and then went on to become congressmen.
That's right.
And some of them were also U.S. senators and governors of Illinois, et cetera. So let's make that our next stop.
Sure.
Okay? Well, Jenny, we mentioned the Hall of Fame, and this is the Congress people, men and women, who went to Illinois College and later went to the Hill. So it's kind of hilltop to the hill. That's kind of cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you notice, we have a lot going in the 19th century, and it's not that we lost people going, but when Illinois College opened in 1829, we were sort of the only show in town. If you wanted a higher education, there weren't a lot of places to go.
A lot of people don't know that it was the first college in Illinois.
It was the first college in Illinois, and so there were a lot of graduates coming out of here then who went on to political careers and leadership in our government.
And I think, didn't the leaders of this college really want to prepare people for public service and civic life and political life? That was sort of accentuated, wasn't it?
Absolutely. That was part of their mission. They came out from Yale to found Illinois College, and their idea was we need good leadership on the frontier. And so that's when they really encouraged their students to go out and participate in public life.
The first graduate of Illinois College, Richard Yates Sr., really made a mark for himself. I mean, it's interesting that he would be your first graduate.
Absolutely. He went and studied the law and then became involved in politics. And lucky for Illinois, he was the governor during the Civil War and oversaw preparing the Illinois troops to get them ready. And within the first 100 days had done a pretty good job. By the end of that first 100 days of the war, it was said that Illinois was the best outfitted state, so its soldiers were prepared.
Well, they certainly had a lot of volunteers from Illinois.
Absolutely.
This fellow is interesting too. This William Jane. Now he was actually became a doctor after he graduated from Illinois College.
He did. He went on to study medicine at the University of Missouri, and then came back to Springfield to establish his practice there, and actually became Lincoln's doctor. When Lincoln became president, he then asked William Jane to go out and be the governor of the Dakota Territory, and so he did that, and then decided he wanted to go to Congress. So he got elected to Congress from Dakota Territory.
What an interesting life, from a doctor to governor, and then back to Congress again. Now, William Jennings Bryan, that name rings to, everybody knows about him from his legal career to his runs for president.
Absolutely. He's an 1881 graduate of Illinois College. Though interestingly, in 1906, he actually cut his ties with Illinois College because he was a trustee, he was a very well-known alum, he was very much liked, came to homecoming and all of these events. But the president at the time, Charles Rammelkamp, decided to accept a $300,000 donation from the Carnegie Foundation. So we don't have much in our archives about Bryan, except a letter to President Rammelkamp that says, you know, as a good populist, I can't agree with this donation from a corporation. And so he severed his ties with Illinois College at that point.
Right?
But we do know that he really enjoyed Illinois College. He was an active alum up to that point, so for 26 years or so. And we know that he cut his teeth here as an orator. That's what he was known for, was his speaking ability. 3
runs for president, never made it.
Never made it.
And at the end of his life became famous in that Scopes trial in Tennessee. So, yeah, and that oratorical skills there too.
Yeah, well, and actually his story leads into our next one. Bryan was a member of the Sigma Pi Literary Society, and very, very active on campus as a speaker, always entering oratory contests. But he struggled because he had a rival, and that was this man, Richard Yates, Jr.
Okay, we've heard that name. His dad was the first governor and the first graduate.
He was the first governor and the first graduate. And Richard Yates Jr. went on to represent Illinois in Congress and also become the first governor who was born in Illinois. So that was a mark that he made for himself as well.
Of course, there are 20 of them, and we don't have time for all of them. We met Mr. Findley earlier in the program. This was him in his younger days when he was in Congress from 61 to 83. Charlotte Reed, from 1963 on. This is an interesting story. Her husband, I think, passed away. She was encouraged to take his seat, which she did, and then got elected several more times. But she had an interesting part in history, didn't she?
In 1970, she was the first congresswoman to wear pants on the floor of Congress. Her staff had given her a pantsuit. Yes, for Christmas, and she thought she liked to wear it. She wasn't trying to make a statement or anything, so she wore it into work, onto the floor of Congress, and it made headlines in the New York Times that a woman had worn pants. She also was the first woman to use the congressional gym and the congressional pool and take advantage of the congressional calisthenics classes.
So they had to put in a whole new restroom and a whole new shower area for this congresswoman. Okay. And this young lady is not only an athlete, not only a very good student, I assume, but also a very good athlete.
Yes, she went to Illinois College for 2 years, majored in political science, and she is still in Congress today. She will hopefully come back and visit us. I know we've been trying to schedule that, and she's going to come back and pay us a visit.
Oh, I'm sure she'd be really, really glad to do that. And, her district comes down further than it used to, so she takes in part of our viewing area, which is the Macomb area and up that way.
Okay.
So those districts, as they get redistricted every 10 years, you never know. She might get closer and closer.
You never know. That would be great. Now, she was part of a literary society as well, and so, like Bryan, learned a lot about speaking and oratory at Illinois College.
You're in the process of making some changes here. You've got some archives in this building that are going to be moved, and you're making some changes in your historical, the way you're keeping history here at the college.
That's right. In 2008, when I arrived, we really didn't have an archive. We have a lot of really neat stuff dating back to 1829, even more Lincoln items, letters, and that type of thing. but really didn't have a good space to store them in. So thanks to the generosity of the National Endowment for the Humanities, and then another grant from Mr. Al Habtoor.
Good old Mr. Al Habtoor.
Oh, he's wonderful. We're so thankful for his support. We are renovating a new space in Shuey Library this summer, and it will be ready in October.
Well, listen, thank you for this visit. This has been terrific. Congressman Findley was wonderful, and thank you for your time and taking us through all this. It's an eye-opener.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Whipple Hall is open to the public only on Mondays, but if you call ahead, you can make arrangements to come in and tour the Congressman Findley Museum. With another Illinois story in Jacksonville, I'm Mark McDonald. Thanks for watching.
Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you. For a DVD copy of the program you've just seen, send $19.95 to Network Knowledge, P.O. Box 6248, Springfield, Illinois 62708. Be sure to include the program name, subject, and when the program aired. You can also order with your credit card by calling 800-232-3605.